Hey, my name's Liz and I'm a metalsmith, if you're new around here or aren't aware. I've been feeling kind of depressy and bummed the past couple of days. Something that brings me a lot of joy when I'm feeling down is making YouTube videos, or at least thinking about making a YouTube video. I have been wanting to start a little series on my channel where I teach you how to make certain things or do certain things, you know, teach you some metalsmithing skills, but not like super professionally shot and like cinematic, but more as if we're just like besties hanging out. So come sit by me. Come closer so I can tell you what we're gonna do today. Hold on, I'm gonna come get you. You okay? All right, come on. Don't mind all that trash on the ground. Let me tilt your head down a little bit. And it's scary. We listened to Doja Cat in the studio. So what we're going to be doing today is making a stamped band, a ring, with a word stamped on it. So you're going to learn how to use letter stamps and you're going to learn how to make a ring. So my favorite type of wire to stamp on, we're going to be doing sterling silver today. You can practice on copper, brass, whatever you can get your hands on. Sterling silver is not that expensive. My favorite to do stamped bands is this rectangle wire, and I will also link this exact wire below. This is rectangle wire 3x1 millimeter, and this bit here is 4 feet. And for this 4 feet of wire, it cost me $37.80 on RioGrande.com. Rio Grande, I don't know. I've always said Rio Grande. So I'm gonna quickly go over the tools that you're going to need to do this. And it's gonna seem like a lot, but if you get all of these tools and you learn how to make this one ring, you will be able to make so many things with these tools that you have amassed. And I am going to link down below mostly Amazon. What I can find on Amazon, I will link on Amazon. I know that people have, qualms about shopping Amazon, and I do too as a small business owner. But it's just accessible for everybody. It's easy. It's usually cheap. So if you want to get started and you're not sure if you want to spend big money on a different website, you can try Amazon. Support Jeffy Bezos. Just kidding. Fuck him. But whatever. I'm gonna send this into montage voiceover mode and show you all the things you need. So, cool transition. Okay, so yes, you're gonna want rectangle wire. I'm using 3x1 millimeter with 1 millimeter stamps. You're gonna wanna coordinate the width of your wire with the height of your stamps. You will need a butane torch and gas to accompany it. What if I lit my hair on fire? I've been metalsmithing for like 8 years and I still use this Blazer Big Shot butane torch and I love it. You will need a soft mallet of some sort. Rawhide is the best in my opinion. I actually got mine at an antique store of all places. You can find a lot of cool tools at antique stores. You could also use a plastic or a rubber mallet, just anything that's soft and is not gonna mar up your metal when you pound on it. In addition to a soft mallet, you're also going to need a metal hammer for hitting the stamps. This is a brass head hammer from Impress Art, but your old rusty hammer from the garage will work when you're first starting out if you don't want to spend the money. This Forbidden Mountain Dew is called Flux, and it's essential for cleaning the metal and preparing it for solder. That's all I really know about it. I'm not a scientist, but you're gonna need some. This is sheet solder. It's the superior solder in my opinion, but there are several different variations. You're gonna need tweezers, not your stash plucking tweezers, but some real sharp pointy ones. You probably could pluck a hair or two with them though if you needed to. This is a ring mandrel. I'm not gonna make any jokes about it because I don't want YouTube to take my video down, but yeah, this is a ring mandrel. It measures rings. You're also gonna need a Sharpie. Smells terrible, we all hate it. You'll need metal shears, not Meemaw's haircut and shears, but a good pair of French shears will do just fine for this project, unless of course you are the Queen of France and you want to get a jeweler's saw. This one is amazing. It's made by Green Lion and it's one of my favorite possessions. It's so beautiful. Of course, you're gonna need metal stamps for this project. These are 1 millimeter metal stamps from Amazon. They're super tiny. I love them. They're great. I'll link them down below. Painter's tape is essential for metal stamping to keep everything nice and straight, so you'll need some of that. You're gonna need a steel bench block to stamp on top of. You'll need a metal file, preferably a half round file. I like cut number 2. I'll link mine down below. If you don't have a file, you can use sandpaper in various grits, but a file will definitely make your life easier. Again, if you are royalty, you can get a Dremel or a flex shaft. This one might seem a little obvious, but you're gonna need a space to do all of this, and not your mama's $2,000 kitchen table. No, something that you are quite literally okay with setting on fire. Check the thrift store, check Home Depot for cheap workbenches. Pliers, I use needle nose most often. You will need a soldering block of some sort, solderite or charcoal, and you will need a respirator. Seriously, get a respirator. California says this shit causes cancer, so. You're gonna need something to oxidize your metal. I use liver of sulfur, it stinks real bad. You can also use a Sharpie if you want it to be a little bit less permanent, or there's stuff called Black Max, which makes me anxious, so I don't like it. Last but not least, and probably most importantly, you're gonna need motivation, inspiration, and a will to live. Good luck with that one. Okay, we'll see what I can do with that in editing. Coming in a little closer to me, I'm gonna pull up a chair. Okay, hey friend. We're gonna start making this ring. Are you stoked? Because you should be, it's pretty freaking cool. So the first thing we're gonna wanna do is cut our wire to size. There are lots of sizing charts on the internet. I found one like 6 years ago that I really liked and that I think is very accurate. And I wrote it here on my bench. And that has been written in Sharpie on my bench for 5-6 years because I'm a goblin. You don't have to do that. You can just write it on like a piece of paper like a normal person. I find it pretty accurate for this size wire. Sizing measurements are gonna be like different depending on the thickness of your wire and if your wire is half round, flat, full round. It's all gonna depend and you will figure it out. That's a little bit advanced for today's lesson. Something I forgot in our little montage was calipers. Not necessary. You could use a ruler, but I find them a lot easier. So I'm gonna make this one for you. Do you know your ring size? No? Okay, nobody ever knows their ring size. We'll go ahead and make it an 8. 8 is a pretty like universal, like pretty common size. I can wear an 8 on like one of my fingers. Most of them are like 11s. We don't finger shame here. All fingers are beautiful. We'll just go ahead and do an 8. So on my chart, an 8 is a 60.6. So we're gonna pull our caliper out to 60.6-ish. I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect. And then I'm just gonna mark it with a Sharpie on this wire. We've got our wire marked. I'm just gonna take my French shears and just snip. There is our piece of wire. That is going to become our ring. You can see here that the wire is not sitting completely flat on that bench block. What I'm gonna do is take my rawhide mallet. I'm just gonna hammer on top of that and flatten it out. A good thing to have, especially if you have neighbors or significant others, is something to muffle the sound. So a washcloth works nicely. Just gonna take my mallet and just give this guy a little bit of a hammer. Doesn't have to be perfect. As Hannah Montana always says, nobody's perfect, but you gotta work it. You know what I mean? There you can see it is sitting pretty much flush with that block. I wanna come in here a little bit closer. So now we're gonna wanna find the middle of this piece of wire so we know where to stamp. I don't know if you can see that, but this is at a 60.6. That is exactly a size 8. I'm so good at this job. I'm just kidding. So 60.6 divided by 2, that's easy math, thankfully. Usually I have to get my calculator out. So 30.3 is gonna be the middle. It really does not have to be like exact. You can see I marked the center of that with my Sharpie. That's where we're gonna wanna make sure we're stamping, you know, even, so it's even Stevens. So, you still awake? Am I boring you yet? Okay, so now we're gonna start stamping. Well, almost, we're close. Don't fall asleep. This is where we're gonna need our painter's tape. So, you're just gonna want a piece a little bit bigger than your piece of metal, and you're gonna put this baby on here, even across the bottom, and not too high up. It's Not something that I can necessarily teach you. It's probably gonna just take some practice. Hopefully you can see that. I've got the tape just lined up at the bottom. That's where I'm gonna stamp. I've got enough space for my 1mm stamps to go right on that line and not hit the top. It's gonna take some practice, but I believe in you. I also like to take a couple small pieces of tape and just put them on the sides, like so, like that, as Tabitha Brown would say. I think it just helps to keep the whole thing like sturdy. Just help, wow. You know what, just trust me. Okay, now if you're chaotic like me, you're just gonna find some random thing to write on. This is just some sandpaper. Usually I write on my bench actually. If you're normal, maybe you'll find a piece of paper. You're just gonna write out your word or your phrase to find the middle letter so that you can start right at that middle point that we put on our piece of metal. Today I think I'm gonna stamp the word enough. Just simple, short, sweet. And I've been feeling very much not enough for any part of this life lately. And I need to cut that shit off. So if you also are feeling that way, you also need to cut that shit off. And this will be a little reminder. So anyway, write your word. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So the middle of our word, right in between the O and the U. So we're gonna start with the U. What I like to do to keep everything very centered is start with the last part of the word, stamp forward, and then come back and stamp backward the first part of the word. That might be a little advanced for you if you have never stamped before. If you're just practicing, doesn't have to be perfectly centered, just stamp it. You know what I mean? Just stamp it. Who cares if it's centered? So now we're gonna get our stamps out. This might be the hardest part of the entire project, although it might just be because I'm blind as shit. But I can never find the letters that I'm looking for. Like, where's this U? I've looked at every single stamp. Okay, here it is. Just go. E-N-O-U-G-H. And now the... All right, bestie, come on in. All right, are you ready? So like I said, I'm gonna start with the U. On my stamps, the letter is printed on the stamp, and you want that printed letter to be facing you. You can also just like look at the letter and see if it's facing the right way, but sometimes it gets a little confusing. You're going to sit your stamp on this metal above the tape, right where you want to stamp, and then you're gonna drag very lightly as not to scratch your metal up. If you do, it's fine, but just try not to. You're gonna drag very lightly until you feel it catch on that tape. And that's exactly where you want to stamp, and you're going to do that for every single letter so that they are all stamped in a nice, neat line. The spacing, you're kind of going to have to figure that out on your own. That's just kind of like a learned thing, I think. You can take your calipers or a ruler and like mark like every 2 millimeters or whatever so that they're exactly spaced like perfectly. I don't do that. Okay, are you ready? We're going to actually do it now. So drag your stamp down until you feel the tape. I hold it with my left hand, hold it as steady as I can. Take my brass head hammer or whatever metal hammer you're using, line it up with the stamp, make sure that I'm, you know, gonna actually hit the stamp and not like hit my finger or something. You're just gonna give it one blow. You're just gonna hit it once, not too hard, like so. Before you move this hand, you can kind of tilt your stamp forward, give it a little tap, tilt it back, tilt it to the sides, just to make sure you get every bit of that letter. It's gonna take some trial and error. I promise you're gonna get it though. If you're working with very small stamps like these 1 millimeters, it's a lot easier because there's not as much letter to stamp. If you're working with some bigger guys like these, I don't know, I think these are 3 millimeters. You have to do a little bit more rockin' and rollin' to like get every single bit of that letter. I would recommend probably starting with something small, just so you kind of get the feel of like how hard to hit it. I'm gonna go in with my G. I just eyeball the spacing and I try to make it the same. You can also use a ruler to mark it if you want. Do a couple little taps. One kind of hard tap, and then just a couple softer taps on each side. Now I'm gonna go backwards and do the O-N-E to finish off the word. You do not have to do this. You can just stamp it all forward. It is a little bit more of like an advanced technique just because like it's a little bit harder to stamp backwards and keep your spacing nice. Honestly though, I kind of feel like if it's a little bit off, that just like makes it look handmade, you know, and I love that because it is handmade. It's not engraved, it's hand stamped. You did that with your body. Your shit's not gonna look like a machine made it, and that is what makes it so cool. Okay, can you see it? So now you can take your tape off and reveal your masterpiece. Dun, 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 dun. If you're super cool and professional, you might have a Maker's Mark stamp. You might also have a metal marking stamp. This is a 925 stamp to indicate that this is sterling silver. I'm gonna go ahead and flip this guy to the back, put my Maker's Mark and my metal indicator, whatever. If you're just practicing, not necessary. Or you could just use like a letter stamp to stamp your name or something. Are you still with me? It is time to form this band and fire the bitch up and turn it into a ring. We are so close to being done. I'm so proud of you. You are the fastest learner ever. You're a prodigy. You're gonna be a great metalsmith. Now what you're gonna wanna do is take your file and file these ends, both ends, as straight as you can. This is also gonna take some practice. You might be a little wonky at first, that's okay. It's still gonna solder, but try to get them as straight as you can so that when you round out your band, it's as flush as possible. How I like to do it is just kind of hold my metal up against my little, you know, this guy. Bench pin. Take my file, sit it flat on top of it like it's a table, and just push as flat as I can, trying not to, you know, angle the file at all. Once you've got your ends filed, you're gonna take your ring mandrel and find the size that your ring is going to be. Mine's an 8, so I'm just gonna set my metal on here at a size 8. This metal is not very thick. It's pretty pliable with your hands. I'm just gonna push it around the mandrel as much as I can with my fingers. Get it into kind of this horseshoe shape. And then you're gonna take your pliers, wherever the hell they are, and you're just going to bend in these little arms here, kind of at like a 90-degree angle, so that they meet up with one another like that. You can take your fingers and kind of push those apart and then like stretch it past. Does that make any sense? And then pull it back so that it kind of snaps together. Again, push them apart, kind of like it's a key ring or something. Push those two ends apart and then push them past each other, give it some tension, and then pull it back. You kind of hear it snap, and then realign them so that it's more flush. You're gonna want it to ideally look something like that. Everything pretty well flush. If there's a little bit of a gap, it's not a huge deal, but if you're seeing a whole bunch of light come through there, you can like hold it up to a light, see if you can see any light coming through. You might need to refile. And now we're gonna go solder. All right, dude, we are ready to solder. I like to pour a little bit of my flux into a little jar. I just dunk the entire ring into it. You can also use a paintbrush, dunk it in there, paint it on, whatever. I just like to take the ring with some tweezers and just plop the whole guy into the flux. There are different solders. This is sheet solder. I like to use sheet solder personally. I hate wire solder. I hate paste solder. But you do you. Get whatever makes you feel good. With sheet solder, you just cut a tiny square. Something about like that. And how I like to solder bands is I just find a nice flat spot on my soldering block. I put the piece of solder down on the block, and then I put that joint that we need to solder right over top. So it's just sitting on top of the solder. Hopefully you can see I've got the ring just sitting right on top of that solder. This is where you need your mask, your respirator. Don't be worried about it. Wear the mask. All right, maybe I shouldn't do that with my finger. So I'm turning this down about as low as I can. It's not a huge flame. The tip of that blue cone, you're gonna put that tip right on the ring. You're gonna go around in a steady circle, not too fast. You're gonna see the metal start to kind of turn orange, and then you're gonna wanna focus right on that joint, and the solder flows right up into the gap. You're gonna wanna have some water on hand. You're gonna take your ring, and this is called quenching. And then right after it's quenched, you can touch it. It's not hot anymore. All right, my dude, we did it. Our ring is soldered, but it's still kind of like D-shaped. So we wanna round this guy out. Okay, last step before we let this baby rest in the pickle pot to get all of this fire scale off of it. So you're gonna take your ring mandrel, you're gonna slide the ring onto it, and you're just gonna push it down. You might have to wiggle it a little bit. Push it down as far as you can. And then once you get to a point where you can't really push it anymore, take your rawhide mallet or your plastic mallet, anything that is not a metal mallet. I sit it here like kind of under my tatas, in the middle of my, what is this, my diaphragm? I don't know. So you're just gonna wanna take your mallet, take your ring on your mandrel, and just gently tap it. And spin the mandrel and tap. You're gonna wanna take it off and flip it to the other side. Mine is sitting at about a 7 3/4 right now. So I'm just gonna keep hammering it. Keep flipping it, keep hammering it. Mine is still sitting at about a 7 3/4, so I'm gonna have to stretch it a little bit. If yours is like about a quarter size or a half size too small, you can stretch it. If it's too big, you're shit out of luck. You're gonna have to cut some of the metal out and resolder it. So if you're a little bit too small, you will take your mallet and just kind of pound down on the top and spin, and that'll stretch it. Sometimes they get stuck on there. You can turn your mandrel upside down and pound on it until it pops right off. This guy's done for now, nice and round. I don't know if you're gonna be able to see the word on there. We did this with our human body today. That's pretty freaking cool. I'm gonna go put this in the pickle pot. My pickle pot consists of vinegar and salt, just regular like white distilled vinegar and regular table salt. There are pickling solutions that you can buy that are chemicals and are scary, and again, I'm too anxious for that. So vinegar and salt works very well. Just in a crock pot. I'll show you. So you're gonna want a mini crock pot that is only for pickling, and some white vinegar. Just pour enough in there to cover whatever piece you're gonna put in, and some salt, plain salt, iodized salt. I've even used pink salt, it doesn't really matter. Just pour some in, cover the bottom, and plop your piece in there and leave it for about an hour. Okay, it's the next evening. I have pickled the ring. The ring's nice and white now. Now we just need to take our file, clean up the solder that is a little bit messy, and then we will oxidize this guy and polish it, and we will be done. Bring you down here to the filing station. So this is where I like a half round file, because you're gonna have to file on the inside of this band, and having a half round file makes that possible. You can see there's a little bit of solder spillage, and it's not completely flush with the rest of the ring. So we just want to take our file and go over that on the inside and the outside to make everything look uniform and to hide that seam completely. You're gonna just want to take your file, hold your ring up against something steady, and follow the curve of the ring. You're just gonna keep filing until you see that solder kind of disappear into the rest of the ring. You're also going to hit the sides. Just kind of go back and forth over those to blend them in. Both sides. And then for the inside of the ring, it helps to have a bench pin with like a little bit of a divot kind of carved out, or I guess you could do that like on your work surface too. Set your band right in that little divot, and then right on the solder seam on the inside, you'll take your half round file, the round part of it, put it in there and kind of twist and push and file that seam away until it blends in with the rest of the ring. To make the ring more comfortable, you also can kind of go around the edge on the inside and just lightly file that kind of harsh edge away. One thing about metalsmithing is you will drop everything every 5 seconds and you will want to bury yourself alive. It's just part of it. Anyway, file away that harsh edge on both sides. And then to really smooth things out, if you have a flex shaft, you have to get these sandpaper cartridge rolls. They are lifesavers. But if you don't have a flex shaft or a Dremel, you can also use sandpaper. Just tear a little piece off and smooth out where you just filed. And then put it on the inside. You'll probably want to buy several different grits of sandpaper to get it super smooth. These are really great though. 10 out of 10 recommend. Okay, now that we've got everything smoothed out and sanded, we're gonna go oxidize it with some liver of sulfur. Let's go downstairs. You're gonna wanna boil water, however you like to boil water. And then I like to use liver of sulfur to oxidize. This is the kind I use, it's the gel. You're also gonna wanna have a designated solder cup or something. I use these old wee jars and toss it in your jar, throw some boiling water in there. And then you're just gonna put a little bit of liver of sulfur in there. I don't use any kind of measurements in anything I do, but just a little bit will work. I could have cut myself out of the corner there, but I thought it was funny. So it'll pretty much immediately turn black, and then dispose of that. Put your ring in a different wee jar and put some baking soda in there. Again, no measurements. Give it a little stir, wash your hands. Okay, we're back in my lair. Our ring is oxidized, nice and like charcoal gray. So now we just need to take the oxidization off of the places that we don't want it, which is everywhere except inside the letters. You're just going to rub it off. You're just gonna remove it in any way that you have access to. I'm gonna use my flex shaft and my lathe. You can use steel wool. You can use these polishing pads. You can use a fine grit sandpaper. You can also high polish your ring in many ways that I'm not gonna go over right now. I personally like a nice brush finish, so for the inside of my ring, I'm gonna use this little 3M bit, and then on the outside I'm also going to use a 3M brush finishy kind of thing on my lathe, which I'll show you right now. Alright guys, so that's what's done. We made a ring. I hope that you have found this information valuable and that you can take this nugget of knowledge and scurry off into your own lives and buy all these supplies and make your own jewelry. That would be so cool. And if you do that, tag me on Instagram or something. I would love to see it. I think it's super cool when people start metalsmithing because it's such a fun craft. If you watched this far, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I have a lot of fun making these videos. If there's something in particular that you would like to see me make or would like for me to try to teach you how to make, definitely leave me a comment. Follow my channel if you want to see more jewelry stuff or not jewelry stuff sometimes. Thanks for being here. Thanks for your support. I hope you have a great day. Bye.